First, there was football. Then, there was fantasy football. Now, there's fantasy football Goon with Goon and Tooch.
Fantasy football Goon with Goon and Tooch. Fantasy football Goon with Goon and Tooch. Fantasy football Goon with Goon and Tooch. Fantasy football Goon with Goon and Tooch. Fantasy football Goon. Touchdown.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Goon podcast. Fantasy Football Goon is a part of the Bears Barroom Radio Network. I'm your host, Joe Mandel, the Goon, and this is your AFC South preview. Joining me as always is my co-host and good buddy, John Santucci, who I call Tooch. Tooch, what's going on, bud?
Oh, I'm doing great. Ready to talk AFC South fantasy football and some good teams in this division as well, Joe.
There's a ton of good teams in this division, a lot of improvement as well. So quickly, I'll run through the format. We're going to talk about blue chip players, which are going to be your fantasy studs, good bets, guys that are probably going to do pretty good for you, sleepers, guys that are kind of on the brim or have potential to be good, and then rookies to watch, defensive outlook, and then strength of schedule. So with that said, Johnny, let's hop into it. First team we're going to talk about here is the Houston Texans. There's no bigger blue chip player probably in this division than DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, Nuck. Yeah, he's great. Last year, 96 catches, 1,378 yards, 13 touchdowns. Big improvement on his year before. I expect him to do well again this year, Joe. A first-round draft pick.
Yeah, I'd agree with you 100%. He's definitely a first-round draft pick. He is going to be a stud. And if Deshaun Watson, the next guy on this list, can stay healthy, he's going to do even better. So, with that said, let's talk a little bit about Deshaun Watson. Season was shortened by an injury, but up to that injury, he was unbelievable. He had almost 1,700 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions, along with 269 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns in what I think was only like 5 or 6 games. So, if this kid can put together a full, healthy season, he's going to challenge some of the best quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, it just exploded. He was putting up 50-point weeks, and and had the knee injury, of course. Let's see how he bounces back. Last year he was undrafted in our league, and I think Tom Savage was starting the season. Is that right? If my memory correct? Tom Savage Savage starting the season. He didn't last long.
No, he did not.
Deshaun Watson came in, man. He was just lighting it up. But I'd be interested we'll have to keep an eye on him during the preseason, see how he's doing from the injury, but I imagine he's probably not going to play much. Keep an eye on the team news for the Texans. But, what round would you expect Deshaun Watson to go in, Joe?
That's a really tough question, John. I think it's hard to say until you watch the preseason, but I'm willing to bet that he will probably go in the 5th or the 6th round just because of his injury questions. But with that said, that's a really good value if he's healthy. Yeah,
I was going to say 5 to 8 rounds, the 5th round to the 8th round, depending on, size of league. But, so we're basically on the same page there.
Yeah, definitely got to watch on. He's not quite a tier 1 quarterback for me, but he's just a step below. So if you can get him, like in those rounds that we talked about, I think you're doing really well.
Yeah, he'll make a good starter on somebody's squad for sure.
But with that said, let's move into the good bets section. And it's your favorite bum, John. It's a guy you love to hate in Lamar Miller.
Yeah, I just never seem to start him on the correct week when I had him on my team. Finally, I think I avoided him. He's just one of those players that I'm snake bit by.
You sure?
But He had an okay season again. He's just kind of, he's not a superstar. He's just solid. But 888 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. 36 catches, 327 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So, he's kind of a guy that's like a second, definitely no higher than a second running back on your squad, maybe a third running back. But going to be pushed harder by a guy we'll talk about in the sleeper section. Should be pushed hard by another running back we'll talk about in just a minute or two.
Yeah, for sure. And another good bet here is Will Fuller. Last year, injury-shortened season, but 28 catches, 423 yards, and most impressively, 7 scores. So if this kid can stay healthy and Deshaun Watson can stay healthy, this is going to be a deadly duo.
Yeah, 7 touchdowns. That kind of was surprising. I remember him kind of lighting it up, but I didn't realize, 7 touchdowns and only 28 receptions. So that's if he can stay healthy. He was banged up. Missed. He only played like 5 games too. So
yeah,
we'll see. See how he does, because you have Fuller and Hopkins and Watson throwing to him. That's a pretty good combination. So if those 2 receivers are looking healthy, in the preseason, that's going to pump Deshaun Watson's value up.
Yeah, absolutely. So keep an eye on his health, but if he's back strong, he's a guy you want on your team in the late rounds of your draft. But let's talk a little here about some sleepers. And the first sleeper here, John, is your favorite sleeper from last year. I'm talking about Dante Foreman.
Yeah, he was in Coach's doghouse, Bill O'Brien's doghouse, and I liked him. He's got some breakaway speed. He's a big, strong back. Only 327 yards and 2 touchdowns. Broke his leg at the end of the year. So, again, we'll have to see how he's bouncing back. But I think he's a better runner than Lamar Miller. Lamar Miller may be a better receiver out of the backfield, but maybe Lamar Miller starts coming in on passing downs, and Dante Foreman starts carrying the load. Something to keep an eye on, though, Joe.
Yeah, for sure. And along with guys like Bruce Ellington and Steven Anderson. Ellington last year, 29 catches, 330 yards, and 2 scores. While that kind of sounds pedestrian now, if he gets a little bit more opportunity this year, those numbers can go way up.
Yeah, he's the 3rd receiver on a good squad, and Texans were really high on him last year. Coaching staff really likes him. They see a lot of potential. There's also Braxton Miller, I think, is still on the squad too. I think Ellington's probably going to get more play, but he's one to keep an eye on, especially if there's an injury to Will Fuller. So, or Hopkins. Ellington is going to be probably the first man off the bench.
And they also have a pair of tight ends that are falling in the sleeper section. John, we've got Steven Anderson and Ryan Griffin. Anderson had more receptions last year, 25 catches, 342 yards, and a score, while Ryan Griffin, 13 catches, 158 yards, and a score. So both of these guys, had some catches last year, but they weren't super involved in the passing game. I believe these guys both fought injury last year as well.
Yeah, they did have a lot of injuries at the tight end position on the Texans. Let's see who's going to emerge at tight end. I mean, it's kind of a toss-up. Anderson is probably the favorite right now. They have a good rookie we'll talk about in the rookie section. He could emerge, and of course Ryan Griffin, who's been there for a while. He's also in the mix.
Yeah, for sure. And our last sleeper in this section is the Texans kicker, Kaimi Fairbairn. 20 field goals last year, and he hit 3 of 4 from beyond 50. So that's pretty solid. So if you're looking for a guy late, he's probably not going to go drafted. But I think he's proven himself pretty good. I don't know how many PATs he's going to get this year, but for fantasy kickers, you're not worried about PATs. You're just worried about getting long yardage or at least getting the 3 points.
Well, it's a good offense. It's a potential to put up 50 points a game. So he's in there because there's a potential for him to get a lot of chances.
Yeah, exactly.
Offense, and then they have a very good defense still, and that's going to give the offense more chances as well. So, he's a good kicker to keep an eye on. If you miss out drafting one, you wait until the 16th round. I mean, it's not a bad call. He might be someone out there. Who the hell is this guy?
Yeah, well,
kick him up. 16, and it could be a good streaming kicker maybe too, or a bye week fill-in.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing wrong with that. And let's move into the rookies to watch section, John. Here I'm talking about, I don't even know the right way to pronounce it, but Kiki Koute?
Kiki Koute. Yeah.
Yeah, I got it right.
Look at those numbers, though, Joe.
It's impressive, man. At Texas Tech, 93 receptions, 1,429 yards, and 10 touchdowns. This kid was an absolute stud, and he's going to be a great addition to this team.
Yeah, he's one to watch at the wide receiver, position, and Texas Tech loves to throw the ball. It's an air it out offense, and Kiki Kute's a smaller receiver, slight, kind of like D.D. Westbrook.
Yeah.
On the Jaguars, who we'll talk about in a few moments. But yeah, this is a good little receiver. And then, of course, they drafted a tight end who a lot of folks are high on. He's a third-round pick. Kid's name is Jordan Akins from University of Central Florida. 32 catches, 515 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So he's also in that tight end mix, Joe.
Yeah, it's important to keep an eye on their preseason to kind of see who emerges, because if one of these guys emerges, they could be a great fantasy steal. So watch the tight end situation. It could really pay off for you. But tell me a little bit about their defense, John.
Well, let's talk about that defense. It's a very good defense, Joe. Last year they were still pretty good without J.J. Watt. He's coming back this year, Joe.
Yeah, the man is a beast. That defense without him for most of the year last year, 32 sacks, 11 interceptions, two scores on defense, and their special teams was kind of okay, mediocre last year, but that Bill O'Brien's really going to stress that, so I imagine their special teams is going to improve.
Yeah.
And they have the easiest schedule in the league, so
right.
You want Texans on your team, no doubt about it.
For sure, yeah. It's looking good. The defense will be a good pick. DeAndre Hopkins will be a good pick. Deshaun Watson will be a good pick. So, an easy schedule. Keep an eye on the Texans. Can monitor the team news. And remember the easiest schedule in the league, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we move on to the next squad, I just wanted to touch on our last podcast. We talked about the Carolina Panthers, but John and I forgot to mention or talk about C.J. Anderson. So, John, before we move on, what are your thoughts on C.J. Anderson on the Panthers?
Yeah, when I was transposing the notes, he didn't make it into the final draft for the show notes, so it's my fault. Yeah, C.J. Anderson, he's going to split time with Christian McCaffrey, so there's some potential there. C.J. is always a pretty good play if he can stay healthy, though, Joe.
Yeah, that's his problem. Like we said, we think he's a solid play. He's going to be a solid running back number 2. He's going to get a lot of carries, and he's a great guy to get in your middle rounds of your draft. And if you can get him on your squad, he's one injury away from becoming a fantasy stud. So, with that said, C.J. Anderson, mid-rounds, could be a stud. Definitely draft him. Don't forget about him. So,
right.
The next squad we want to talk about here is the Indianapolis Colts. Their blue chip player, Andrew Luck, is finally throwing a ball again. He looks like he's finally healthy. And when he was healthy in 2016, 4,240 yards, 31 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. And then he had some rushing yards too, 341 yards and 2 scores on the ground. So when this guy is healthy, he is an elite quarterback. There's no doubt about it. I don't think there's anything to question there. It's just a matter of if he is fully healthy. And for me, I think he's a guy that you can draft with that confidence because he finally looks healthy out there.
Yeah, well, Captain Andrew Luck fired his gun recently. His arm's looking healthy.
Boom, boom.
Don't know if you follow that.
The Twitter, it's the best. It's my favorite Twitter account in the world.
I recommend everyone follow it. But, yeah, the 2016 numbers were amazing. So, I mean, I think I drafted him. I think I might have drafted him hoping he would come back healthy, in like one of the late rounds, Yeah. And he never came back. So, but yeah, was hoping to have him as a backup, and if he ever came back, insert him in there and maybe like turn like a 13th, 14th round draft pick into a starting quarterback. But it didn't work out, Joe.
No, it didn't work out, but hey, I think this is the year he finally turns it around. I'm going to call it right now. I think he's the comeback player of the year. Andrew Luck has tons of weapons at his disposal. We'll talk about those guys in a minute. But before we go ahead.
Where do you think Andrew Luck is going to get drafted, Joe? It's a good question, huh?
It's a tough question, and I think everyone's going to have a different answer. For me, I think he's probably going to go in the 5th or 6th round. As soon as that run on quarterbacks happens, I think Andrew Luck's going to go, especially if he has the preseason that I think he's going to have. I don't think he's going to play all that much, but I think they are going to let the cannon go a little bit. maybe a couple plays here and there, maybe one series with the offense. So I think once people see him throwing that ball, they're going to be looking to draft him.
Yeah, this is another one you're going to have to monitor real close, like Deshaun Watson. So, so far we've got 2 teams with quarterbacks coming back from injury. Another blue chip player is T.Y. Hilton, Joe. Had a little bit of a down season for T.Y., but, 57 catches, 966 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He also suffered through some injuries as well.
And he suffered through some backup quarterbacks, John.
Right. I kind of like the backup quarterback of the
Jacoby Brissett?
So. Yeah, Jacoby Brissett. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But T.Y., he should have a bounce-back year with Andrew Luck back and healthy. T.Y. Hilton, his value's definitely on the rise.
Yeah, he's going to be a wide receiver that's going to go early. I imagine he'll probably go in the 2nd or 3rd round, depending on how the run on wide receivers goes. But, and I think his reception count's going to go up. His yardage will probably stay around the same, but look for the 57 receptions to go up and the 4 scores to go up. And another.
I think he might surpass the yardage, but he's a guy that gets 15, 20 yards a catch. So I think it might go up, but it all depends on Andrew Luck, Joe.
Yeah, it does. And the next guy on this list had a great season last year in Jack Doyle with 80 catches, 690 yards, and 4 scores. Obviously, in PPR leagues, he has higher value because people are looking his way often. But we do have to keep in mind lots of Jack Doyle's numbers, all of them last year, as a matter of fact, came without Andrew Luck. We do not know how his chemistry is going to be with Doyle because he hasn't really had a whole lot of time with him. But he does have another tight end fighting him for receptions, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I still think Jack Doyle is probably going to be drafted as a top 5 tight end because he put up the numbers last year to match that.
Right, I had to go back and look at those numbers. I was really surprised he did that well. But like you said, he's going to be splitting time with another pretty good tight end we'll talk about in a few moments. Thoughts on where Jack Doyle will get drafted, Joe?
I still think he gets drafted as a top 5 tight end. I think he'll probably end up going 5th or 6th round is my guess. People probably aren't fully sold yet. They may have seen last year as a fluke, but he showed he can do it, so I think he can do it again. And after talking about the blue chips, we got some good bets here on the Colts, and I don't know if there's a more seasoned kicker in the league than Adam Vinatieri. 29 field goals last year. He hit 5 of 6 from beyond 50 yards. He's solid, and what does he do, John?
Kicks in a dome.
He kicks in a dome. We love those guys.
Yeah, he's I'm not sure who's older, him or Matt Bryant.
I think it's Vinatieri.
Yeah, I do as well.
I'm looking it up right now because it's going to drive me nuts.
Well, while you're looking it up, I'll talk about the next guy, and that's Marlon Mack, who the guy I was really high on last year. I liked him coming out as a rookie last year. 358 yards, 3 touchdowns, 21 catches, 225 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and he's the lead dog now, Joe.
He is the lead dog. Frank Gore has departed, and it's time for the Marlon Mack show. I know you and I were excited about him last year, and I'm really excited to see what he can do on his own.
Yeah, me too. And I think he'll be a sneaky pick, Joe. I like the pick.
For sure. And Adam Vinatieri is 45 years old, John.
Whew. Wow. So, yeah, he's older than Matt Bryant. But, 45, coming back for another season.
Yeah, he'll be 46 in December. So if they make the playoffs, he'll be 46 years old. Well, I mean, he'll still be playing in January, but, that'd be something to see.
Yeah, and another guy I want to talk about in this good bet section, he's the guy who's going to be starting opposite of T.Y. Hilton. Dante Moncrief has departed. He is on the Jaguars now, Joe.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about him in the next moment or two. But this guy's name is Ryan Grant. He came over from the Redskins, had 45 catches, 573 yards, and 4 touchdowns with the Redskins. But he'll be starting opposite T.Y. Hilton. So I guess I could have listed him as a sleeper, but Joe, he's a starting wide receiver. So he's one you want to keep an eye on. If he's starting opposite T.Y. Hilton, he could get more targets this year with the Colts than he did with the Redskins.
And there's no doubt about it. Luck always threw to Moncrief, and I don't think that's going to change with Ryan Grant. So definitely a guy to keep your eye on. I don't think he's a sleeper either. I think he's a solid wide receiver 3 with the upside to possibly be a 2. And moving into that sleeper section now, finally, John, is a guy we were just talking about a little while ago in Jacoby Brissett. Obviously, his value depends on the health of Andrew Luck. But last year, in relief, Jacoby Brissett put up some pretty good numbers. Passed over just about 3,100 yards passing with 13 scores. He did have 7 interceptions, but he had 4 rushing touchdowns and 260 yards on the ground. So that was a super impressive season from a kid that people did not expect it from.
Yeah, it wasn't even on the Colts at the beginning of the season.
Right.
They traded for him, and he became the starter. So very impressive for the rookie. Of course, he was a Patriots 7th round draft pick, and they traded him to the Colts, and he really impressed for a rookie to go through the season and put up pretty good numbers, Joe. Anything happens to Andrew Luck, and there's potential there. That's why he's in the sleeper section.
No doubt, and obviously they signed Eric Ebron in the offseason, coming over from Detroit, so he's going to challenge Jack Doyle for targets on this team. But Ebron, 53 catches last year, 574 yards and 4 scores. So between him and Doyle, it could be very much a Patriots 2 tight end set kind of situation. So I think both these guys are going to have fantasy value. I like Jack Doyle more, but I think both of these guys are worth drafting on your team.
Yeah, it's not good news for Jack Doyle, but Eric Ebron is someone to watch. If either one goes down, it's going to increase the other's value. But I like Jack Doyle better as well. However, his targets may go down with Ebron, hanging around.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Doyle's receptions will go down and his yardage will go down. But again, we have to wait and see on that front. And the rookies to watch, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of these Colts rookies?
Well, the Colts have an interesting rookie running back named Naheem Hines from North Carolina State. He had 1,137 yards and 12 touchdowns last year on the ground, 26 catches and 152 yards. I imagine he's going to be backing up Marlon Mack.
Sure.
So, kid to keep an eye on. If anything happens to Marlon Mack, he's probably going to get the call. They still have Robert Turbin. Don't know. He's buried down on the depth chart, though. Not sure he makes the squad. But another rookie is a good wide receiver named Deshaun Kane from Clemson. And 58 catches, 734 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So, with T.Y. Hilton and Ryan Grant, Deshaun Kane could be, 3rd or 4th wide receiver on the Colts. Just another guy to keep an eye on.
Yeah, he's a great sleeper on the year, and he has a lot of potential. So those are the guys we always like to watch. And, the Colts have a good defense. 33 sacks last year, 8 interceptions. And their special teams was pretty good too. I think they had 1 special teams score last year. But they have a fairly easy schedule as well, John. I think they're number 22 in the league. So if Andrew Luck comes back and all the cards fall in place, this could very well be a playoff team.
Yeah, it's not a bad defense. It still has some good pass rushers like Eric Walden and Robert Mathis. So I think Vontae Davis is still a cornerback there. He's one of the better cornerbacks in the league. So it's an okay defense to consider. At least for streaming.
Yeah,
easy schedule too, Joe.
Yeah, definitely a team to consider streaming. But moving into a team that was 1 game away from the Super Bowl, I'm talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars. And they really only have 1 blue chip player, John, and that's Leonard Fournette. The kid was an absolute beast last year. 1,040 yards, 9 touchdowns, 36 catches, 302 yards receiving, and 1 receiving score. So Leonard Fournette was all business last year, and that's with being out for a few games throughout the season. So if he puts together a fully healthy season and he keeps the off-field stuff to a minimum, we're looking at a top 5 running back if he's healthy.
Yeah, really good rookie season for the kid. Jacksonville worked on their offensive line. They signed the top guard in free agency, Andrew Norwell. So there's a good chance Leonard Ford can improve on those numbers with an improved offensive line in Jacksonville. I like this kid. He's probably a first-round draft pick, Joe. What do you think?
Yeah, he probably is going to be a first-round draft pick. In PPR leagues, I like him even better because I think he's going to catch more balls this year too. But, I think a lot of people may not be fully sold. They might think about the sophomore slump. So I think some leagues he'll go in the first round and some leagues he'll go in the second. But either way, you want to get him on your team because his offensive line is so much better.
Yeah, our first good bet is the king of garbage time, Blake Bortles. Although this year, Joe, they overhauled their receiving core and tight end core. So I kind of, like Blake Bortles this year to be more than the king of garbage time this year. I think he'll be a better quarterback. They have a fairly easy schedule. They have the best defense in the league, which means more chances for Blake Bortles. So they got rid of Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns, letting both those guys depart free agency.
Yep.
And they kept Marquise Lee. But Blake Bortles, last year, 3,687 yards, 21 touchdowns, only 13 interceptions, 322 yards rushing with 2 scores on the ground. He always kind of sneaks some rushes in there. So he's, not really a running quarterback, but he does run a lot. But has the potential to sneak some touchdowns in on the ground.
Yeah, he does. And you mentioned Marquise Lee. Last year he was great, 56 catches, 702 yards, but only 3 scores. I think now that he's the number one guy, for sure, those numbers are going to go up. I think I like him closer to 900-plus yards. Touchdowns, probably around 5. So I think Marquise Lee is going to be a great value pick this year. He's going to go a lot later than he should. I don't have any problem taking Lee in the 6th or 7th round.
Yeah, he should improve on those numbers for sure. And, I believe Dante Moncrief is going to be starting opposite him. He had an injured season, but another guy on the Jaguars that doesn't get mentioned all that time is a guy named Keelan Cole, Joe. Don't know if you heard of him, but 42 catches, 748 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So that's almost 20 yards a catch. He's the deep threat. Definitely a receiver to keep an eye on. If he gets a little more playing time than Dante Moncrief, he could be a good bet. But this is a situation with wide receivers. They have some decent wide receivers, so something to keep an eye on. But I like this kid's potential, Joe. Yeah,
and they upgraded at tight end. Mercedes Lewis, I think, finally left after all these years. And now Austin Seferian-Jenkins coming in. Put together a pretty good second half of the season after a suspension last year, but 50 catches, 357 yards, and 3 scores. This kid's got a lot of potential, and if he can finally realize it all, I think he's going to be targeted pretty heavily by Blake Bortles.
Yeah, it's a guy that I think is probably primed to break out. Don't know if he will. 50 catches, though, last year, not bad. He definitely could improve on that, as a Jacksonville team. This is a team that's built to win, with a good chance of winning that division again this year. So it's a chance for him to make a mark.
Yeah, for sure. And, we can't talk about Austin Seferian-Jenkins without talking about all the other sleepers on this team because, Jenkins has been a sleeper for as long as I can remember. But Dante Moncrief here, you mentioned earlier, coming off of an injury, but he's had some pretty impressive times with the Colts when he is healthy. Didn't do much last year, 26 catches, 391 yards, and 2 scores. But again, he was injured. But we all know how dangerous he can be when he's fully healthy. So keep Moncrief on your radar. You're going to want him on your team. And then a guy you liked a lot last year, John, I'm talking about D.D. Westbrook. You mentioned him a little while ago. 27 catches last year, 339 yards, and 1 score. I think his numbers are going to go up.
Yeah, really good route runner. Kind of a slighter guy like Kiki Kute, who we were just talking about. And, these are 4 wide receivers that are all kind of in the mix for playing time. Marquise Lee being the lead dog. Then Moncrief, I think, is listed as a starter. But, if he can't stay healthy, there's guys like Keelan Cole and D.D. Westbrook to emerge as fantasy stars. But that's why they're listed as sleepers, though, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. And, their kicker, Josh Lambo, was pretty fantastic last year, too. 19 field goals. He had 4 or 5 from beyond 50. This team's going to score a lot of points, and that's what you look for in a kicker. So if Josh Lambo's there in the last round, pick him up.
Yeah, I think he wasn't their kicker for the whole year. I think he they picked him up, some point during the season. So he didn't have a full season with the Jaguars. I want to say he was on the Chargers, but he's someone to keep an eye on for sure as a kicker. He can do a lot worse.
No doubt about it, man. And obviously you got TJ Yeldon to talk about as well. He's kind of like that third down. Well, yeah, I guess he's kind of like a third down back. 253 yards rushing, 30 catches, 224 yards. He has more value when Fournette is down, obviously, but he's still a guy you got to draft.
Yeah, he's the first guy I think of if anything were to happen to Leonard Fournette. But, he's probably a waiver wire pickup for me. But, I definitely like Leonard Fournette this season. But Yeldon, whenever Fournette goes down, he's the guy they call on. A good receiver out of the backfield. I'll just watch the waiver wire for him, Joe, I think.
Yeah, he's a waiver wire guy. So don't jump the gun on him, but just keep your eye on him during the season. And then, John, the rookies to watch. Here's a guy you've been talking about for a while. Why don't you talk to us about DJ Chark?
Yeah, LSU not really a passing defense. Still have 40 receptions and 874 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's averaged over 20 yards a catch. So, he looked really good in the Senior Bowl. Fast, he's tall. So, they do have a lot of receivers. He's going to be fighting for time out there, but he's definitely someone to keep an eye on. Remember the name. He's going to make the squad. So, keep an eye on DJ Chark. A name to remember.
Absolutely. And obviously, John, we don't have to tell people, but they're the top defense in the league. They had an insane number of sacks last year, 55 sacks. That was first in the league. 21 interceptions, 2 touchdowns. And their special teams was okay, not as good as their defense, but they still had a special team score last year. So, this defense is phenomenal. They are worth an early pick. They're probably going to have to go. I imagine they're going to get picked in the 10th round, which for me is something I won't do. But if you want Jacksonville, they're going to put up the points. And they have a fairly easy schedule, number 25, easiest in the league. So if you're going to take them, you're going to have to get them early to get them, but I think it might pay off.
Man, I think they'll get picked earlier than that, Joe. I don't know. I'm thinking somebody's going to pull the trigger like 7th, 8th, 9th round. That's just me. I know it's early.
It's too rich for my blood.
It's someone who's thinking I'm going to draft my defense now and not worry about defense the rest of the season. I have the number 1 defense. But yeah, it's something to talk about for sure. Something to talk about when we have Danny Shimon on the show, Joe.
Yeah, we're going to have him on soon. All right, so moving on to our next team here, Tennessee Titans. And they only have a handful of blue chip players, John, but they have one of the best tight ends in the league with Delaney Walker.
Yeah, I'm kind of hesitating to put these guys up there as blue chip players. Delaney Walker for sure. He's getting old though, Joe. Still had a decent year, 74 catches, 807 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Like to see him get in the end zone a little bit more. I think he'll still be a fine tight end, but I don't think he'll be, drafted as early as everyone thinks. I'm thinking maybe, middle rounds for him. But another guy who's listed as blue chip players, this guy's finally getting his chance. It's Derrick Henry. Doesn't have to split time with DeMarco Murray anymore. Although there is a guy there still, we'll talk about in a second. There is another running back that Tennessee signed. But Derrick Henry probably going to carry the load, Joe.
Yeah, he is.
What do you think?
Yeah, I really think he is. He's getting his shot. DeMarco Murray retired, so in comes Derrick Henry, a guy that you and I have been talking about the last 2 seasons. He was fantastic last year. Even with Murray on the squad, he had 744 yards rushing, 5 scores, 11 catches, 136 yards, and 1 score. And DeMarco Murray did a lot of the receiving out of the backfield, and I think his receptions are going to go way up. So this is a guy that I'm targeting in all my leagues. He is going to be a PPR machine as well. He can catch the ball. People don't seem to remember that. So for how late Derrick Henry's going to go, he might be the most valuable pick in this draft.
Yeah, and they have a decent offensive line too for running game. Those numbers should all go up if he gets the kind of play we're talking about. The guy that is behind him, though, Joe, I guess we can talk about him. He came over from the Patriots. That's Deion Lewis. I had to go back and look. He almost had 1,000 yards with the Patriots. He led the Patriots in rushing, 896 yards, 6 touchdowns on the ground, 32 catches, 214 yards, and 3 scores through the air. So, a total of 9 touchdowns for Dion Lewis, Joe. Did you know he had 9 touchdowns last season?
Yeah, I know he did, and he's one of those guys that it's, of course, the year I couldn't draft him. He's doing all the scoring, but, he did what he had to do to go get paid because, he wasn't going to stick around in New England with that log jam. So, Dion Lewis, I think, is going to act more as a receiver on this team. He's still going to do some rushing out of the backfield, but I think, the share of the carries is going to Derrick Henry. So look for Dion Lewis to be a receiving threat and have a couple carries out of the backfield. But either way, he's a guy you're going to draft.
Yeah, he's draftable for sure. I imagine Henry will get the bulk of the first and second down and carries, and Dion Lewis is going to come in on third down and 2-minute drills. Obvious passing situations. Dion Lewis will be coming in. Let's talk about the quarterback on Tennessee, Joe. Didn't have that good of a season last year. What do you think about Marcus Mariota?
Yeah, Marcus Mariota had a horrendous year last year. 3,232 yards passing, 13 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. That was absolutely brutal. But on the ground, he rushed for 312 yards and 5 scores. So even after all that, he hit 18 total touchdowns. Not too bad for a guy who had a down year. He's definitely got to take care of the ball better, and he's got to, get more accurate. But I think he's going to have a better year this year. He's got better weapons around him, and with time comes patience. So he's getting a little bit more older. He's getting a little older in this league, and I think he's going to have a better year. With that said, for me, he's a backup quarterback. I don't think he's a starter for my team, but he's a guy that you draft as a backup with the potential to be a starter.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he's primed to take off. As you said, he's got Derrick Henry is pounding the ball, and Dion Lewis is coming in on third down. Remember, he didn't have Corey Davis last year. Corey Davis missed almost all the year. That was their first round draft pick. If Corey Davis comes back healthy, he's going to have a good number 1 receiver. And then, of course, you also have Rashard Matthews, who's a pretty darn good receiver as well. He could be a number 1 also. So, Marcus Mariota, I think he's in the good bet section, but he's a sneaky pick. But I think he's going to start the season as someone's backup quarterback. And then if that starter on that squad goes down or doesn't perform well, Marcus Mariota could do better. I mean, this was a playoff team last year, Joe.
Yeah, it was. People seem to forget that. And, I think that they have all the weapons there. But you definitely got to draft Mariota, probably as a backup, but more potential than that. And you mentioned Corey Davis and Rashard Matthews. Both those guys, last year Corey Davis was injured, only 34 catches, 375 yards, and no scores. But coming back healthy, he's a guy you've got to take a chance on because he's got so much talent. Same goes for Rashard Matthews. While he was healthy last year and he was the lead dog for most of the season, 53 catches, 795 yards, and 4 scores. I think his touchdown count's going to go up. I'm not sure about his yardage or receptions with Corey Davis back, but I do like Rashard Matthews to score a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah, those are 2 good starting wideouts. If Corey Davis is a beast. If he's healthy, he could be a really good number 1 wide receiver. He's kind of like a Josh Gordon light. Built like that. He's fast. He's a really good route runner too. Great hands. He's tall. Corey Davis will be a sneaky pick if healthy. Someone's going to take him. People are going to forget about him because he didn't play much last year. And someone's going to get a good receiver on their team, maybe like a number 2 receiver with the potential to be a number 1 receiver on their squad. And Richard Matthews has also got some potential to become. He's a potential 1,000-yard receiver.
And they also have a fantastic kicker too, John. They've got Ryan Suckup, 35 field goals, and he hit 2 of 5 from beyond 50 yards. So he's a pretty solid guy. He's probably a kicker you're going to keep undrafted, but if you're streaming kickers towards the end of the season or during bye weeks, he's a guy to keep an eye on. But also, John,
I think he's draftable, Joe. I targeted him last year. He's one of the better kickers in 35 field goals. 2 field goals a game is pretty good. I think he'll get drafted at the end of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to get a kicker in the last round, I mean, you can't do that bad.
Yeah, if he's there at the end, I'm grabbing him.
Absolutely, man. And obviously they got some sleepers on this team. You got Taywan Taylor, 16 catches, 231 yards, and a score last year, as well as Jonnu Smith at tight end, depending on the health of Delaney Walker, who had 18 catches, 157 yards, and 2 scores. But if Walker goes down, I think Smith's value goes way up.
Oh, for sure. And of course, Taywan Taylor, the third wide receiver in that group, so may come in probably going to work on the slot. So he's a guy that could, really like double those numbers he's got right there. And then Jonnu Smith, very talented tight end, the heir to Delaney Walker, but still Delaney Walker's team right now. And then they have some good rookies too, Joe.
Yeah, they got Deontay Burnett from USC. Last year, 86 catches, 1,014 yards receiving with 9 scores. So that's a heck of a season, and he's one of these guys that's going to blend right into this team.
Right. Sam Darnold's favorite receiver. Yeah. Good route runner. Smaller guy. Definitely a guy to keep an eye on, man. Could push Taywan Taylor for playing time. And then they have a good running back out of Iowa, Akram Wadley. 1,109 yards, 10 touchdowns, 28 catches, 353 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He's out of Iowa, so he's a guy also to keep an eye on. He's gonna any injuries to those guys, and this is a kid that's got some good potential.
Yeah, he does, and he's a guy that if you're in a keeper league or a dynasty league, you're going to pick him up and you're going to draft him for sure. The Tennessee Titans defense, they were pretty good last year. They had 43 sacks, 12 interceptions, and very good special teams. So I think they're a draftable defense. John, what about you?
Yeah, I think so too, and they're easy schedule, Joe.
Yeah, they're the 31st easiest schedule in the league, so only one team with an easier schedule. So things are favorably set up for the Tennessee Titans. Mike Vrabel taking things over, so they may show a lot of potential this year, and they have a lot of fantasy points on this team, I think.
Yeah, I do too. Again, it's a playoff team from last year. Lots of good players in this division, Joe.
There sure is, and we made our way through that entire division, John. For you folks out there listening, make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram, like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, and YouTube, and then make sure you visit us on fantasyfootballgoon.com. We have our rankings up there, and ask us questions. We answer all questions all season long. You can follow me at Joe Mandel and Fantasy Football Goon at FFBGoon. And John, where can people follow you?
Follow me at Santucci_John on Twitter. Make sure you visit BearsBarroom.com for great Bears content. Articles by great writers, and I've got some articles there as well. Good place to go for quality podcasts and articles and all things Bears. A fun website, Joe.
Yeah, for sure. And then I know I mentioned it last week, but I'll go ahead and bring it up again. We're going to be hosting fantasy draft parties at Vintage Bar, and that's 1449 West Taylor Street in Chicago, Illinois. There's going to be 3-hour draft packages that you can purchase. So for $45 a person, it's going to include a draft board, stickers, a Fantasy Football Goon swag bag, and some domestic drafts and wings. So for $45 a person, that's a pretty good deal. There's also going to be $5 Bloody Marys, $15 buckets for domestic beer, $18 for import buckets, and then they got chicken and waffles for $12. So you really can't beat that. So, and I'm going to be there, and we're going to have Tooch if he can make it, and if not, we'll just have him on the phone. But man, it's going to be a good time, so make sure you come visit us at Vintage Bar.
I will try to get there if my wife lets me out, and agrees to watch the babies. It's going to be a good time
for sure. And if anyone out there is interested in booking a draft at Vintage Bar, call 312-526-3627 extension 2. So starting August 12th, we're going to have these draft parties, and hopefully we see some of you guys there.
Right. And this Saturday, Joe and I will be at Bears training camp. Representing Fantasy Football Goon, and be there with some of the Bears Barroom podcast personalities. So coming out to Bears training camp in Bourbonnais, Illinois, if you wanted to meet up with myself and Joe and some of the other Bears Barroom guys.
For sure. We'll have lots of Fantasy Football Goon swag. So if you shoot us a tweet and if you're at Bears training camp, we'll give you some swag. So make sure you follow us at FFBGoon. Follow me at Joe Mandel and follow John at Santucci_John. Thanks as always for tuning in. And Tooch, thanks as always for joining me.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Joe. Love talking fantasy football with you.
God bless America. God bless football. And let's kick some ass. See you next week as we preview the NFC West.